lowrider truck parked in front of the building just minutes before the explosion. Sources suggest that the blast was so powerful it has completely destroyed the north side of the building. The area is in chaos with reports of injuries and fatalities. Rescue efforts are underway to locate survivors trapped in the debris. This is a developing situation. Officials are urging the public to avoid the downtown area and allow first responders to do their work.
Explosion.
Receive information regarding
Everybody looking out! Watch the electricity line! All the way to your right, hurry! Let's take it out.
A jury convicted you of killing 168 people. The American public, by and large, generally believes that you are the Oklahoma City bomber. Is there anything that you can say, or is there anything you want to say about what happened there?
I think, like everyone else, I thought it was a tragic event. And that's all I really want to say.
Hello and welcome to Series 11 of I Could Murder a Podcast. We are back once again. It feels great to be back. Happy New Year. I know it's mid-January now, but Happy New Year. Welcome. I hope you had a bloody lovely one. And some people have been saying, is he going to be here? Have you lost him? Did he choke on some wrapping paper? No, he's still here. Ben Carter, how you doing?
I do sometimes have to open presents. If there's enough sellotape to warrant it, I do sometimes open presents with my mouth. But doing really well, thank you. I'm so glad to be back with you boys for another series. What a big series it will be. We've got some huge cases coming up. And we're starting with a big one. How are you, Producer Dan?
Very good, thank you, Ben. Happy New Year, boys. I hope you're well. What a fantastic off-season we've had. Lots of things going on. Spotify Wrapped was fantastic as always. Thank you, everybody, for your ongoing support. Sounds so formal. Lovely new bits of merch popping around. And we've had a massive influx of memberships on our website, which is amazing. How did that happen, Tom?
Well, if you haven't seen, we are now on Spotify in two ways. We've got our minisodes now readily available on Spotify, visual and audio. You might notice a few little episodes with padlocks in it. Well, what's that padlock for? I want to open the padlock. Well, in order to do that, just click on it, or you click up the top of the page there, and you basically can sign up. I believe it's around £3 a month. You'll get access to 200 minisodes-ish, and every week we'll be adding minisodes onto there. Why not come into the pantry and have a look at some of the minisodes that you maybe haven't had before? I don't know what to say. A lot of the cases you guys request, we have actually covered as minisodes as well, so there's nearly 200. So why not join the cult? And very exciting times.
At least think about it. Think about it. The same as well on Apple, by the way, for Apple users. And then for everyone else, just head over to icmap.co.uk. It covers all bases, really. Apart from Deezer. But
Fuck Deezer.
Yeah, there's
what a waste of time that was.
Just to say, on Apple, you have to go search I Can Murder Minisodes, and then you go via the podcast bit to get it. It's not through padlocks. It's very different system. I can't stress that enough. But yes, we are back once again with a new case. It is a big case, like Ben said, and we have a lot of big cases this series. Very excited to get back into it. We have missed you guys. Thank you so much for all the lovely messages over the Christmas period, but we are excited to be back.
Should we get into this case?
Let's.
So this week, of course, it is the case of the Oklahoma City bombing, also referred to as the case of Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, the road to April 19th, homegrown extremism and American bombing, 2 minutes past 9, the story behind the Oklahoma City bombing, from Ruby to Waco, and the life and crimes of Tim McVeigh. Well, it's obviously a very big case. It's a case, because we've done an episode on Waco, and I need to be careful how I say this.
Oh, damn.
From how Waco was handled, and I would love to one day cover Ruby Ridge as well. I understand the frustration, and I understand the outrage and the anger over that situation. And again, I need to be careful how I say this,
Don't overthink it.
I'm not surprised
He's overthought it.
that something like this happened.
Ooh.
Based on those two incidents. Is that fair to say without wishing to cause any offence? I am not surprised that someone reacted, an extremist reacted like this.
I'd say it's not absurd to understand why there was anger created by those events. But unlike you, I don't think you can say this is okay.
I don't know if that's what I said. I don't know if that's what I said.
I can maybe have misread it.
Yeah.
Unlike you, I think that this shouldn't have happened.
Again, don't think I said that. Definitely
Okay,
shouldn't have
well,
happened. There are different ways to go about it.
One
Okay,
last
sure.
time.
Sure.
Maybe next time, just have a little bit of a protest. And a quiet one. Just a board.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll settle on that one if I
No bombs from my side of it.
Or mine.
I'm not going to go into that thing because not the bomb bit. Joking aside, yeah, I can see, yeah, I can understand completely why anger was caused. Obviously, there's a lot more running through Timothy McVeigh rather than just being angered by those events, which obviously we'll get to. But yeah, there's definitely unrest in the US at this time.
For sure.
April 19th, 1995, 7 a.m. After spending the night sleeping within the confines of an explosives-laden rented truck, 26-year-old Timothy McVeigh awakes with a terrifying sense of purpose and almost 2 decades of hate weighing on his heavy heart. He starts the engine and proceeds to drive the truck, stocked with an intricate and deadly homemade bomb, towards the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, located in Oklahoma City. Focused and methodical, he carries out his plan with ice-cold precision, quietly parking the truck in a spot he believed would maximise destruction and devastation. His thoughts were consumed by anger and resentment towards the American government, which he blamed for 2 recent national controversies, Ruby Ridge and Waco, believing this act would send a direct message of defiance. Despite the enormity of what he's about to do, McVeigh feels absolutely no hesitation or regret, viewing his actions as a necessary step in his personal war against the United States. As he casually walks away from the parked truck after arming the bomb, he blends into the bustling morning crowd, his demeanour calm and composed, showing no outward signs of the devastating violence he was about to unleash on his home country and many hundreds of its people.
So how could such a large-scale attack occur without any kind of detection? What drove 2 American men to commit such a heinous act against their own country and people? Why was such a specific location chosen as a target for the bombing? And how significantly did the Oklahoma City bombing change national security, government policies, and the perception of terrorism in the United States? The answers to all of these questions would shock a nation. Yeah, my memory of this case, or the only thing I knew about this case beforehand, is quite niche. Did you guys ever watch the Bowling for Columbine documentary, Michael Moore?
Yes.
He meets James Nichols, the brother of Terry Nichols, and kind of goes onto his farm and into his house. And that guy, I watched it when I was quite young. That guy terrified me. He goes into another room and pulls a gun from under his pillow and then wants to prove it's loaded and apparently holds it in his mouth. And he's just all around a very on-edge individual.
Yeah, I do remember him. And he always looks like he just has natural eyeliner on. But yeah, I remember him being quite like, yeah, he was very eerie. And it's referenced a lot, obviously, with terrorism cases and things like that. So it's one that I didn't know a great deal about. I knew it was linked to Waco and Ruby Ridge as well, but it's fascinating to actually look into it properly.
So what we're going to do is look at the background of Timothy McVeigh and explore exactly how he came to make the decisions he made later in life, ultimately causing the Oklahoma City bombing. And there's a lot to unpack here with his background. I started off thinking it was very straightforward until I get to about 10. Then things start to go a bit all over the shop, you know?
Yes, it's some big old suitcases. And yes, we are going to unpack them. So hope you're sitting comfortably or having a lovely walk somewhere. But let's crack on.
Timothy James McVeigh was born on the 23rd of April, 1968. A classic early Taurus.
What do you mean by that, sorry?
The star of the Zodiac's Taurus.
Classic early Taurus.
That's really classic, sort of very early on in the Taurus calendar.
Calculator, you're about to say, weren't you? In the Taurus calculator.
Yes. Now, he was born in Lockport, Niagara County, New York, which apparently stands as both a town and a city at the same time. I promise there's no more of these needless facts. He was the middle of 3 children born to Irish-American parents, Noreen Mildred Hill and William McVeigh, being their only son and having both an older and younger sister, and this was Jennifer and Patricia. Growing up, and particularly for the first decade of his life, Timothy had a relatively straightforward childhood. He was described by neighbours as shy, timid and withdrawn, whilst his own family would recall him being an outgoing and incredibly playful child who later became more reclusive and withdrawn as he grew older. This could in part be put down to the fact that his parents would divorce in 1978 when he was just 10 years old, as from this point onwards he would be raised mostly by his father, and it is at this stage that many believe Timothy's life changed direction entirely.
In a belief that he would carry about himself for the rest of his life, his parents told their children that they divorced because they were just too different. Not long after the separation, Timothy moved 7 miles south to the nearby town of Pendleton, New York, to live with his father. His 2 sisters, meanwhile, would subsequently spend a lot more time with his mother back in Lockport. Thus began an inkling of isolation, something that would only deepen over time. Throughout these formative years, he is said to have only had one girlfriend, who has since remained anonymous, and later admitted to numerous different journalists that he struggled with both how to talk and how to try to impress girls. Dan Herbeck, one of the lead reporters for the Buffalo News during the 90s, recalled,
"We were never told anything that would have given you warning that he was going to do something like this. In fact, as a teenager, he was the young man that people in the neighbourhood would choose to babysit their kids."
At school, Timothy was described as a bright and highly capable student who regularly underachieved, which is quite... I thought it was going one way.
Yeah, that sentence tails off a bit.
It does a bit. If you were the parents of that teacher, you'd be like, oh. It's basically just, he's got a lot of potential, but he's not living up to his potential, which I got all the time at school.
Oh.
Yeah.
I probably got the opposite.
No potential, but he's doing all well.
Yeah.
Absolutely killing it.
Yeah. He's surprising us every day.
He's doing his best.
He used a knife and fork yesterday.
He's 16. Sorry.
There's a bit of a hot dog, and it's quite a weird thing to see. To his classmates, he appeared uninterested and unenthused about his studies, as well as the school system itself. Like so many of these cases we have covered before, Timothy claimed he was regularly bullied at school and that he would retreat to his bedroom where he would daydream about taking refuge in his own fantasy world. This is a world where he was able to retaliate against anybody who had previously bullied or wronged him, where he could regularly fantasize about different ways in which he could put things right.
In his early teenage years, Timothy was introduced to firearms by his grandfather. What was initially a hobby very quickly became a passion, and Timothy would spend a great deal of his time out hunting or doing target practice with his father and grandfather. He decided that, as soon as he left school, his dream was to open and operate a gun store. Alongside this, he was accepted onto his school's athletics team, where he had an active interest in running track. Not a running track, but running track.
Yes. Yeah. Running on the track.
Yeah. None of his close friends or teammates were at all aware of his deep interest in guns at this stage. They did not, or would not, have even believed he owned a BB gun. Did you own a BB gun at any stage, boys?
Yeah.
Or was that allowed?
No, I wasn't allowed. My brother was the kind of guy who definitely would have shot me with it. So, yeah, that wasn't working in our household. We weren't allowed full sugar Coke in the house because of him. So,
oh, why?
He's doing well now. He's doing well now. He's doing well. I think he's allowed full fat Coke now. But watch out.
Good.
Would it just make him, have the zoomies?
Yeah. The zoomies and the punchies and the kickies.
Oh no.
Yeah. All
Everything.
those things. Yeah.
Sorry you went through that, man.
Yeah, that's fine. I was thinking, like, if he was into the running track, can you imagine him always going, I'll start this race. Give me the gun, I'll start the race. He really likes starting the races. What are you done? You weren't allowed one either?
Not at all. No, Mum was very strict. Wasn't even allowed to watch cartoons, really. So, BB gun, no.
BB King, though, always on the record player.
That is actually correct.
Fantastic. You could later in life, though, Dan, cartoons and BB guns. It's never too late, I imagine.
It's never too late.
There's a thing you can get which is like a salt gun, and that's for killing flies.
Ooh.
Which apparently is very satisfying. And
salt?
Yeah, you put like salt grains in there, or like kind of the thicker salt grains, and you shoot them. Apparently it changes how you view, if your flies in the house, you get excited rather than being angry.
Is that a red flag, though, getting excited by extermination?
Well, I was going to say, I'm never angry when a fly's in the house, to be fair.
Yeah,
I think that's a red flag.
Well, I embarrassed myself, Dan, didn't I, in a recent Minnesota? I've been trying to see how long I could keep a fly alive in my house.
You named it as well, yeah?
Frinkle, yeah, Frinkle the fly. I think he lasted
Don't
about
clean
6
the
days.
shit. Frinkle loves it.
It was an experiment, and then I got a bit sick of him after a while because I thought, they have really short lifespans. He was in here for like 5 days, and then, as you said, you've overstayed your welcome. Come on, open the door, and he flew the other way, even further into the house.
I remember a dog training thing I went to before, and essentially a fly flew into the room and the dog couldn't handle it. And the reason why the dog couldn't handle it was that dog watched the Breaking Bad episode with the fly. And ever since then, it triggers him, like he can't deal with flies.
Wow.
Yeah, so be careful what your dog watches on TV. But anyway, enough waffle, back to the case.
Some former schoolmates, however, have claimed that Timothy often brought guns into school in order to impress and intimidate his classmates. In his late teenage years, Timothy discovered the, quote, venomously racist novel, The Turner Diaries, which was written in 1978 by William Luther Pierce, who was the then founder and chairman of National Alliance, a white supremacist group. In the book, which has been described as the Bible of the racist right wing and has allegedly influenced at least 200 racially and or politically motivated murders, an armed revolution takes place against the federal government and any non-whites or Jews at the hands of the white supremacists. In one part of the book, a truck bombing of the FBI headquarters takes place shortly after 9 a.m. in the morning and is described in vivid detail. It is believed that Timothy became almost spellbound by this book, frequently quoting it and later selling copies of it to others.
There's a ton of information out there about this book, and it will remain in the case throughout our timeline as well. Straight away I wanted to look at reviews of it, but all I can find is that 55% of users found it a good read, which is terrifying.
How many times have you read it, Ben, and how much can you quote from it?
I can tell you there's illustrations in there that are a bit not as good as whoever did Quentin Blake. Yeah, they are a bit scribbly though.
Sophie?
I can't tell you anything else about the book. It does sound very aggressive and like a personal vendetta from the author. But
I'm going to tell our listeners and viewers not to read it because be part of the 45%.
It's like Brexit.
Whilst attending Starpoint Central High School, Timothy developed a heavy interest in computers, and it is reported that he was actually able to hack into government systems from the school using his Commodore 64 under the alias The Wanderer, a name that was inspired by the Dion DiMucci song, aptly named The Wanderer. Timothy, you remember, I am the Wanderer, na-na-na-na-na-na-na. I'm going around and round, just in case we can't get the audio in there. Timothy was apparently so skilled with computers that he was eventually recognized in his senior year as, quote, the most promising computer programmer. Despite his quiet demeanor and apparent shyness, his classmates jokingly voted him most talkative. However, his academic performance remained relatively poor over the years. I think, as we said, he was clearly intelligent. He just he wasn't really motivated or couldn't be bothered by school. And eventually he would graduate in 1986 with below average grades. In his yearbook entry under future plans, he wrote, "Take it as it comes. Buy a Lamborghini. California girls."
That is a very surprising line from Timothy McVeigh. That feels to me like a kind of more of a jock thing to say. Buy a Lamborghini, California girls, and from him, I wouldn't have thought that would be what he's aspiring to do.
Oh yeah, I feel like a lot of people in his year would have seen that and been like, "What? Timothy, really?"
Unless he's been sarcastic and he's like, that's what all these idiots would say, whereas his wouldn't be that. I don't know. Yeah.
Interesting. Forensic psychiatrist Dr. Philip J. Resnick said the following on an adolescent Timothy.
He was a good student. He was bright. Though he didn't always apply it, he clearly had above average intelligence. Sometimes you look at the history of a severe criminal conduct and there is childhood abuse or abandonment, and you can see how someone developed into it. There was absolutely nothing striking in McVeigh's background.
From this moment onwards, Timothy continues to develop a deep interest in firearms, gun rights, and the Second Amendment, which was partly fueled by regularly reading military-oriented publications like Soldier of Fortune. He briefly attended Bryant Stratton College, but dropped out after a short time. Following this, he worked a series of jobs. That's from Wayne. Following this, he worked a series of jobs, including as a fast food server and an armoured car guard, but it's believed that he gradually developed a distaste for the job market, as he believed that women and minorities were given priority over white working-class males. During his time as a guard, multiple co-workers stated that they picked up on his intense obsession with firearms. One colleague recalled Timothy arriving at work looking like Pancho Villa, unnecessarily wearing bandoliers across his chest, despite this not being part of his uniform. So basically just who Pancho Villa is. He's a key figure in the Mexican Revolution who is known for wearing a bandolier atop pretty much any outfit. He made it work.
He did rock a bandolier. Horse top, standard, just standing there, multiple settings.
Whether doing a big shop or at a wake, you can always know Pancho Villa is going to wear a bandolier. First episode back, guys. Give me a break. I need to get into the room. Thank you so much. Another thing to note on one of the documentaries I watched about this case was essentially his granddad worked in a factory for 30 years of his life, and so did his father in the same factory. And by the time that he was of age to perhaps go into the same field of work as them, it had pretty much shut down, and it was a time where lots of factories were shutting down in the areas, and people were feeling like jobs were not readily available, so the anger boiling up, thinking minorities and women were taking the roles as well. This will have all added to the fuel of Timothy McVeigh, which, it's a sad state to say that this is still very much a vein of anger and hatred that runs through the world now. It's definitely worth mentioning that he probably would have ended up in that factory as well as his because he loved his granddad so much, looked up to him, but yeah, it wasn't actually available when he was of age.
And then he went a very different way.
In the spring of 1988, not long after Timothy had turned 20, he made the decision to enlist in the United States Army after telling those close to him that he was worried about going nowhere in life. He remained in the Army for the following 3 years, eventually being promoted to the rank of sergeant. This was despite him being reprimanded for purchasing a white power t-shirt at a Ku Klux Klan rally not far from his base. When they were there protesting against the inclusion of black members in the military after a couple of members had been seen wearing black power shirts. Timothy was apparently incredibly displeased about the reprimand and viewed it as extremely unfair. Timothy utilised all of his training as well as spare time on the base to read about explosives, sniper tactics, survivalism and firearms.
It is during his time in the military that Timothy met a man by the name of Terry Nichols, who was initially his platoon guide. The pair immediately hit it off due to their shared beliefs and passions on most things: weapons, politics and race. Timothy also became a highly skilled marksman, becoming a top-scoring gunner with the M242 Bushmaster chain gun.
It's basically those cannon-type guns that sit alongside tanks or other armoured vehicles. You know that? There's a big
thought that, yeah.
Big ones that sort of knock you back a bit when you fire it.
So when you get hit by it, that's probably more than knock you back. But
we know a lot about the military.
You usually slag them off, so it's really nice to see that you've done some research.
Do you actually?
I don't know if I have in the past.
I think you have, not meaning to, but you
I think once I maybe did once in Dennis Nielsen. But yeah, one of those big guns, Dan, basically, yeah. He's really good at it.
While serving as sergeant, it has been reported that he assigned most of the undesirable or particularly unpleasant work tasks to black servicemen and also used derogatory terms when addressing them. Despite these concerning behaviours, he was deployed on Operation Desert Storm in the Persian Gulf War.
So I have to assume at this point that there was a lot of racism in the military because no action was taken against him. I mean, he got reprimanded for buying the white power shirt from the Klan, but then actively and openly being racist to people you were handing out tasks to. That is surely, well, nowadays you'd be gone, surely.
Yeah.
But he stays in rank and is deployed.
Well, saying that, I'm sure there's a lot of racism and discrimination still happening in these workplaces, but you'd like to believe nowadays that would be warrant to be expelled, or I think it'd be naive for us to go, it's completely fine now. Yeah, definitely. It's very jarring to see that, him wearing a t-shirt, then he's still being able to be a sergeant and in charge of people.
Timothy certainly saw combat during the deployment and definitely observed highly traumatic experiences, but the extents of which are both not clear. Later in life, he claimed that he decapitated an Iraqi soldier via a cannon from 1,100 yards away. He also claimed that, on his very first day, he hit an Iraqi tank more than 500 yards away, and then the Iraqis present surrendered. Whether these stories are true or not, he did receive several awards for his service, including the Bronze Star, the NDS Medal, and the Army Service Ribbon, as well as many others. He returned to America, wanting to join the US Special Forces. However, 21 days into their assessment and selection course, he withdrew, claiming to friends and colleagues that he had busted his ankle and could not continue. However, in a letter to his superiors, he wrote that he was not physically ready for the role. He was then honorably discharged in 1991.
So those two recollections he has, one of his first day and then one of this 1,100 yard decapitation, I feel that has to be an exaggeration, right?
1,000 yards is quite long.
1 kilometre.
Is it? Oh, of course, yeah. Is it?
I think it
No,
is.
it's not.
That's not.
I don't know.
1,000 metres is a kilometre, isn't it?
It's 1,093 yards, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, these are claims that he made about his experiences. He definitely saw combat, and he definitely was witness to some very traumatic experiences. But yeah, whether or not these first two things happened is, we can't prove it or disprove it. So it's up to you, our lovely audience. After returning home, Timothy struggled to find his place in civilian life and struggled to obtain any sense of purpose. Now a war veteran adult living in his childhood bedroom, his life started to take a darker turn. He continued to grow disillusioned with the government and started to write to various newspapers and congresspeople to voice his mounting concerns. During this time, he reconnected with his old army friend Terry Nichols, and the two began to bond over their shared frustrations with the government. Apparently, the pair convinced one another that the US Army had placed microchips into their buttocks in order to track them at all times. Like a new pet you've just brought home. Or they might have got microchips prior to you collecting the pet. But from here, conspiracy theories very much become prominent in their shared lives. Timothy subsequently moved in with Terry and his brother for a time, helping with odd jobs on the Nichols farm in Decker, Michigan. And this is where, James Nichols was present, and he's a guy that just makes me feel uncomfortable. The pair also reunited with a man by the name of Michael Fortier, who had briefly been stationed with them in the army. He too shared their beliefs as well as their anger with the government. It was during this period that Timothy's ideological frustrations began to reach boiling point, particularly as he immersed himself in anti-government literature and multiple conspiracy theories. Together with Terry, Timothy began to share more radical views, particularly in relation to gun rights, the US government's power, and growing mistrust of law enforcement. Timothy would regularly write angry letters to the government, including one that stated the following.
Do I need to sound angry here?
If you could sound mildly annoyed, Dan, which I imagine you do very well, no offense.
Well, I always do.
Yeah. Dan, let me set the scene. You're mildly annoyed at the government. You feel like you're getting taxed a bit too much. Oh, kind of. Nothing's changed. And also you're buying into some conspiracy theories, which you, you're getting mildly pissed off now.
Go ahead. Take everything I own. Take my dignity. Feel good as you grow fat and rich at my expense, sucking my tax dollars and property. Taxes are a joke. Regardless of what a political candidate promises, they will increase. More taxes are always the answer to government mismanagement. They mess up. We suffer. Taxes are reaching cataclysmic levels with no slowdown in sight. Is a civil war imminent? Do we have to shed blood to reform the current system? I hope it doesn't come to that, but it might.
Shout out to reading Cataclysmic in first try.
Yeah,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I mean, he'd hate taxes now, if he hated them then.
Yeah, to clarify, I do believe taxes are a good thing, although it's really annoying every time you get your tax bill every year.
Small business owners, it's really fucking hard.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
So despite everything going on in Timothy's life at this point, he still sought romance, and he still wanted to make a better future for himself and, hopefully, one day, his eventual significant other. However, as Timothy worked long hours in what he referred to as a dead-end job and didn't have a place to truly call home, his advances were rejected by any females he worked up enough courage to approach. That's always going to be a confidence hurter, that one. This continued to leave him feeling nervous and doubtful around women, and continued to fuel his frustrations. Timothy felt ultimately that he only caused pain to those he cared about, and his frustration over his inability to find a girlfriend grew into a simmering anger. He turned to gambling as a result, which quickly became an obsession, and over just a few months he racked up so much debt that he couldn't repay it, and so he took out a cash advance and eventually defaulted on his payment obligations. It was like in the $20,000 to $30,000, I believe, that he racked up over that period of time. But yes, still annoyed about taxes. Had all that money and the loan to burn through.
Didn't he have that because it's a kind of a vicious cycle, isn't it? Because the taxes,
Yeah,
he's trying to gamble to get out.
Down spiral, yeah.
So it makes sense.
It's vicious.
He wasn't like, I've got so much money, I'm just going to gamble it.
Tax-free. Actually in America it's not, is it? I don't know.
Do you know in Dubai you don't pay income tax?
Yeah, and Monaco as well, Dan.
In America... Oh, sorry.
Might move there.
In America,
Very nice. Sorry, that's right.
In America, the
Maybe.
IRS...
You could. I mean,
They're bastards.
We're thinking about it, yeah.
In America,
Sorry, Ben.
In America, the IRS adds a 30% withholding tax on any gambling winnings automatically. Wow. 30% withholding tax on any winnings.
I don't even know what that really means. Still.
And they basically add tax to your winnings, so you lose 30% of your winnings.
We used to pay withholding tax
Stinky.
on YouTube. And then we
Oh, did
fixed
we?
it. Yeah. When I changed the profile to Dan Lambert.
You turned TikTok into a shop.
Keep doing that.
Desperate to escape what he saw as an oppressive system and hopeless life, Timothy began searching for a state with low taxes, where he could live free from heavy government oversight. He ultimately ended up renting a small apartment which came without a telephone, meaning that his employer could not call him to offer him overtime.
So you can say the other bit if you want.
No, sorry, Ben's written a joke here.
Not really a joke, just a
Go on,
thought.
Ben, don't, you're hyping it up too much. I'll set it up again. I'll set it up again.
Thank you.
Meaning that his employer could not call him to offer him overtime.
And I guess any prospective dates couldn't contact him either. It's just a thought. It's just a thought.
I think the word perspective kills the flow of the joke a bit, but
Well, they were prospective. Well, they weren't even that, really. No offence. Offence.
is there any more of those?
No more of those. That's the only one. That's the one zinger.
That's the zinged. Fucking zing the shit out of
We're
this.
back. We are back.
His anger deepened when he was informed that the government had overpaid him $1,058 during his time in the army and demanded immediate repayment, which that would be sore if you spent that money. I'm sure he's probably bought a fancy gun.
Gambled a lot of it away as well.
And taxes.
Debt.
This perceived injustice fueled his growing resentment, adding to his sense of alienation and mistrust of authority. And two key events in American history only added fuel to this fire. In August of 1992, 2.5 years prior to the Oklahoma City bombing, the first of two key events that profoundly influenced Timothy's radicalization occurred. And this was the Ruby Ridge standoff. As Ben mentioned earlier on, we're going to go over this, quite lightly, but we do plan to one day cover this properly. So we're not just skimming over it, we will eventually cover it properly, but there's a lot to it. This incident, which occurred in a remote cabin in Boundary County, Ohio, stemmed from a conflict between Randy Weaver, a white separatist, and federal authorities. Weaver was charged with selling illegal firearms and failed to appear in court, leading to an 11-day siege at his remote cabin. The confrontation began when US Marshals surveilling the property clashed with Weaver's family, resulting in deaths of Weaver's son, Sammy, and a deputy marshal. The standoff escalated when FBI snipers later killed Weaver's wife, Vicky, as she held their infant daughter inside the cabin. The incident ultimately ended with Weaver's surrender, but it became a flashpoint for anti-government sentiment, particularly among far-right groups and militias. Timothy was infuriated by what he learned of the standoff and considered it an extreme example of excessive force and mistrust.
So yeah, as Tom said, this would be a case that we definitely cover in depth one day. But yeah, for me, from what I understand, there was a huge, obviously the whole event itself was controversial, but this sniper shooting Weaver's wife, there was a lot of questions as to whether or not that was green lit before it happened, and he just went a little bit rogue. So there'll be more on this particular sniper shortly, but it's a fascinating and horrifying case that we'll definitely cover one day.
Between February 28th and April 19th of 1993, the end date of which marked exactly 2 years prior to the Oklahoma City bombing, the second event took place. And this was the Waco siege.
Yeah, and this one we have covered previously, so do feel free just to search Waco Siege and add the name of our podcast. Play the episode, man.
Essentially, quite a similar occurrence took place, but on a much larger and more publicised scale. Federal agents were attempting to arrest David Koresh, the leader of the Branch Davidians religious sect, on firearms charges. The initial raid by the ATF resulted in a gunfight that left 4 federal agents and 6 Branch Davidians dead. A 51-day standoff quickly followed, during which Koresh and his followers, including many women and children, refused to surrender. The FBI eventually launched a controversial assault using tear gas to force the group out, which ended in a catastrophic fire that engulfed the compound, killing 76 people. The incident deeply polarised public opinion, with many criticising the federal government's handling of the operation. Once again, Timothy, who attended the scene in person, was infuriated by what he learned of the siege, and considered it an extreme example of excessive force and mistrust. On being in Waco in person at the time of the siege, Timothy later said, "That whole incident is burned into my memory. I'm even emotional right now as I talk about it. I felt absolute rage. With Oklahoma City being a counterattack, I was only fighting by the rules of engagement that were introduced by the aggressor. Waco started this war, and hopefully Oklahoma will end it.
So while following the coverage of the Waco siege on television, Terry Nichols and his brother began instructing Timothy on how to create explosives using household chemicals mixed in plastic jugs. Timothy started experimenting with the creation of pipe bombs and other small explosive devices. He also started making and selling Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, or the ATF. He basically made hats that were riddled with bullet holes amongst their logo. So quite a controversial hat by Timothy there, along with a flare gun that he claimed he had invented that could, quote, shoot down an ATF helicopter. He also started making videos a good solid 12 years before YouTube was launched. And these were basically propaganda videos that highlighted the government's actions during the Waco siege and Ruby Ridge. He also started distributing pamphlets with provocative titles like US government initiates open warfare against American people, as well as Waco shootout evokes memory of Warsaw 43. He also started selling bumper stickers from his car at the scene of Waco as well. With new firearm restrictions scheduled for 1994, Timothy felt that his livelihood was now under threat. Whilst the siege was ongoing, Timothy was photographed, I believe he was also interviewed, selling bumper stickers, one of which stated, "When guns are outlawed, I will become an outlaw." And he also distributed pro-right literature, including the Turner Diaries, not far from the site in Waco. He was interviewed sitting on top of the hood of his car, where he said the following.
The government is afraid of the guns people have because they have to have control of the people at all times. Once you take away the guns, you can do anything to the people. You give them an inch and they take a mile. I believe we are slowly turning into a socialist government. The government is continually growing bigger and more powerful, and the people need to prepare to defend themselves against government control.
For the 5 months that followed the Waco siege, Timothy was given the opportunity to work at travelling gun shows, where he started distributing free cards printed with the full name and address of a man by the name of Lon Horiuchi. And this man was actually the FBI sniper allegedly responsible for the murder of Weaver's wife at Ruby Ridge. Now, on this card, obviously he doxed, that's my favourite word, he doxed him, fully gave out his name and address, but the following chilling sentence was also printed. In the hope that somebody in the Patriot movement would assassinate the sharpshooter. Lon Horiuchi had gained notoriety across the country for his role in the Ruby Ridge standoff, specifically for shooting and killing Randy Weaver's wife while she held her infant daughter. Timothy wrote continuous hate mail to Lon Horiuchi, suggesting that, quote, what goes around comes around. And at one point, it was later revealed that Timothy even considered basically abandoning the whole Oklahoma City bombing plan in favor of assassinating Horiuchi or a member of his family instead. Timothy then decided to quit his job, sell most of his possessions, and go full-time on the gun show circuit. Sounds like you're just going to the gym a lot, doesn't it? A little bit.
It does a bit.
Little giggle from the boys, I'll take it.
It's good then, actually.
Yeah.
I'm on the gun show circuit with my protein and my water.
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 Lost it a little bit.
Been lifting so much.
Shit,
It's got my
stuff.
vocal cords.
Timothy quickly became a regular presence on the gun show circuit. It's kind of like going to the gym or something, Dan.
Fucking hell.
With the protein bars.
I got my water. Dear, oh dear. Travelling across 40 states and attending roughly 80 shows in total. He befriended a gun dealer by the name of Roger Moore. Not that Roger Moore, though. That Roger Moore, famously did like guns.
Imagine.
Yeah.
James Bond actor.
Yeah,
from
my
Marcus.
favourite Bond. Controversially, my favourite Bond, Roger Moore.
My favourite Bond is just
Really?
friendship between people.
That's
good.
brilliant.
That's good stuff. We're
Quick.
back. We are
Cheers,
back.
Dan.
We are back.
Full series of this, if you want it.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, everyone doesn't like him as Bond because he's too camp, but I thought he was the best. He was, for me, the best Bond.
He was camp.
Yeah, that's what people said. Just all comedy, wasn't he? Which I liked.
It's just cheap innuendo more than anything. wasn't
Yeah,
it?
which I love. So, best Bond ever, Roger Moore. This is like Jar Jar all over again, isn't it?
Roger Moore, yes, please. Oh! His name does suggest. He discovered that anti-government sentiment grew stronger, and further west he went, with the notable exception of what he disdainfully referred to as the People's Socialist Republic of California. At these shows, Timothy sold survival gear, energetically discussed his love for firearms and hatred of the government, and continued to distribute copies of the Turner Diaries. When he was back at the nickel farm, he and Terry started buying large quantities of ammonium nitrate, which was then an agricultural fertilizer. with plans to resell it to other survivalists. However, they instead began to stockpile it. This was fueled by rumours that the government was preparing to ban the substance. Yeah, very similar to Breivik, without obviously using fertiliser to create what would then go on to be explosives.
Similar views as well with Breivik, didn't they? Similar politics. Different to Unabomber. He was a bit more left. Kaczynski was a bit more left.
Left to his own devices, he wanted to be.
Fantastic.
Yeah, the cabin. But yes, at this time, Timothy moved to what he deemed to as a nuclear-free zone, the state of Arizona. Here, he started living with a friend and former military colleague, Michael Fortier, eventually growing so close to him that Timothy was his best man at the wedding. I imagine the speech would be that fun.
Any case we've covered, I'm putting you on the spot here massively. You had to pick one of them as a best man, based on what you know about them. Personality, what they'll bring to a speech.
I think Bundy probably would be quite good.
That's fair, actually.
Quite good with words, though we'd lie a lot, so maybe not. What about, anyone that springs to mind for you?
Albert Fish, just to make Dan uncomfortable. And he also spoke kind of old-timey, didn't he? Put the needles down, Albert.
Stockton Rush.
Stockton Rush would probably do a pretty good speech, to be fair, Dan.
Yeah.
Michael Jackson?
Yeah. There's a few, isn't there?
This is it. This is it.
Let us know in the comments below.
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. If you could pick any, let's say serial killer, to be your best man, who would it be? Let us know, and we will put that in. We'll do that on Spotify as well as a little question.
Who would it be and why? Why?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was doing Richard Madeley massively.
Michael Peterson.
Oh yeah.
He's mine.
Yeah. No. You can have Ian Watkins. Eventually growing so close to him that Timothy was his best man at his wedding, like I just said. During this time, both Timothy and Michael experimented with drugs, particularly methamphetamine and cannabis. But Timothy wasn't as interested in the drugs as Michael was, and eventually relocated after growing tired of Michael's drug habits. So yeah, a bit of a whirlwind there. Best man. Michael's getting too into the drugs, and he's like, you know what? I'm out of here.
Stephen Avery would probably wear a suit too big for him if he was at a wedding.
I don't think he'd be very good with words, Avery.
No, shy, nervous.
During his time living with Michael, Timothy started sharing some of his plans of causing the ultimate revenge to America, informing him that it is time to take drastic action against the US government. Timothy shared his detailed plan to bomb a federal building with Michael, but he chose not to get involved when the question was asked of him. Michael, after learning of the plan, also told his wife, but neither went to the police.
Come and bomb with me, Michael.
No, dude. No.
Is he gay?
Timothy explained that he viewed federal agents as soldiers and therefore believed that he should target them at their command centres. According to his later biography, he felt that bombing a federal building would make the most impactful statement. Though, it is important to note, after the bombing, Timothy claimed that he felt conflicted about his actions and the lives lost, occasionally expressing regret in letters to his hometown newspaper, sometimes wishing that he had instead carried out a series of planned assassinations against police and government officials rather than bombing a building.
So that's quite rare, I think, in cases where it's politically motivated, how they express any kind of regret, because, you know, they're going as a martyr for the cause kind of thing, and then so I was quite surprised to hear that he is feeling regret.
I watched an interview with him that was very much near the end of his life, and he was still very stern, angry, dedicated to what he'd done. And he showed an ounce of regret over a particular element of this case, which we'll get to, but only the smallest amount, where he seemed a bit human for a second. But he covered it up again. He said he came from a family where men don't cry and you hold things back and you're not emotional, and he's obviously had that military experience as well, with very direct with what he says. And it is bizarre towards the end, because I can't tell if he's being legitimately remorseful or not.
Over the course of 1994 and the early months of 1995, he started writing or speaking with a select group of friends, informing them that he had progressed from the propaganda phase to the action phase of his plans. He wrote to his Michigan friend Gwenda Strider, "I have certain other militant talents that are in short supply and greatly demanded." Whilst he also wrote essentially a 23-page goodbye letter to his childhood friend Steve Hodge. In this letter, he explained in detail what each sentence of the United States Declaration of Independence meant to him, whilst also concluding with, "I know in my heart that I am right in my struggle, Steve. I have come to peace with myself, my God, and my cause. Blood will flow in the streets, Steve. Good versus evil. Free men versus socialist wannabe slaves. Pray it is not your blood, my friend.
I always find it disconcerting when people use your name a lot when they talk to you. It's usually when someone's trying to sell you something. It always makes you just feel a little bit on edge.
But I imagine if you're Steve and you haven't heard from him since childhood, you get a document through the door.
Steve, there's a small book here for you.
Yeah, that's concerning. That's concerning.
Definitely, yeah. Especially if he's writing like that all the way through. How many Steves is he saying in the whole thing? Jesus Christ.
People like to hear their own name. It's science. But that is overkill, isn't it? That is overkill.
I don't.
Do you know what, Tom?
No, I don't. Ben.
Oh, that's nice.
Benjamin Carter of One Crab Creek.
Wow. Timothy wrote another letter in a similar tone to a long-term customer of his, and this was actually another man named Steve, but this time Steve Colburn. In the letter, not only did Timothy try to recruit Steve to his plans for the bombing, but he also reiterated his stance against America. He wrote the following.
A man with nothing left to lose is a very dangerous man, and his energy or anger can be focused towards a common, righteous goal. What I'm asking you to do, then, is sit back and be honest with yourself. Do you have kids or a wife? Would you back out at the last minute to care for the family? Are you interested in keeping your firearms for the current future monetary value? Or would you drag that 06 through rock, swamp or cactus to get off the needed shot? In short, I'm not looking for talkers, I'm looking for fighters.
So to summarise, at this point in his life, Timothy was all consumed by a deep hatred for the US government. He was convinced it had become a corrupt, all-talking, tyrannical force. He still held intense anger in his heart regarding the events that took place at Ruby Ridge and Waco, and believed that the government and its varying police and security forces were oppressive enemies of the people. His growing isolation and profound sense of loneliness allowed him even more time to focus on his plan, and on essentially honing in his skills on bomb making, whilst his beliefs and motivations that a loud, violent message of retribution needed to be sent remained at the forefront of his mind at all times. Despite his meticulously crafted plans, he also wrestled with a sense of hopelessness about his life and a lack of connection with others. But he was able to brush that to one side as he decided that his only remaining option was to make an impact, together with Terry Nichols. And they did this in order to force the government to face the responsibilities for its actions. It is here that we move to the timeline of Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma City bombing.
Between October of 1993 and August of 1994, over this period of 10 months, Timothy McVeigh fully utilises his network of far-right militia, firearms and explosives enthusiasts, survivalists and trusted friends. He and Terry Nichols explored the option of buying a highly remote property in Arkansas together. A selling point of the property was its incredible remoteness, as well as expansive land and numerous outbuildings. And lots of lights, lots of windows, lots of light into the building, made it really feel nice and spacious.
I keep sending you properties like this, Dan, don't I? Or just land for sale in America and like Norway and stuff. Yeah,
in Norway, yeah.
A lot of Norway.
Cheap as chips, really. And I would snap them up in a heartbeat, but they're just, the local shop is not nearby, so that puts me off.
You have to sled there.
You have to hike, yeah. Or sled.
Hike and sled.
Do we have to worry about you two?
Not yet.
No?
No.
Maybe.
A lot of comparison. Little traits here. All of which the pair believe would help them in their storage, creation, hiding and testing of homemade explosives. Timothy also starts using the name Tim Tuttle to purchase small quantities of nitromethane, a key ingredient in explosives, at hobby shops all over the country whilst travelling with gun shows. Like hobby shops buying. That's oof.
Tim Tuttle as well. I don't know if he's got that from anywhere. You know, it's obviously kept his first name intact. Timothy Tuttle is a serial entrepreneur and CEO of MindMeld. Oh no, this is a different time.
Yeah, I would have gone a bit further afield, but then maybe he's thinking about if someone shouts, Roger, he might not respond.
Yeah.
So Tim, he's
Makes
straight in there.
sense.
Yeah. In the months that follow, Timothy denounces his US citizenship and also starts making and testing small bombs in a self-made bunker in Arizona.
September of 1994, Timothy selects the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma as his priority target for his plans. The building was used to house the offices of many federal agencies, including the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, the DEA, the Secret Service, and the Social Security Administration. It's alleged that there was an FBI presence there as well. It also coincidentally housed recruiting offices for the US Army and Marine Corps. Though it is speculated whether or not this was known to Timothy, it also housed a child care centre. Timothy chose the Murrah building because of all the targets we just mentioned, but also because he expected its glass front to shatter under the impact of the blast, becoming a symbolic incident of America under attack. Yeah, he was all about this is really a really weird way to say it. He was very much thinking about the aesthetic of his actions. He wanted that, the propaganda photos taken, thick smoke in the air, debris all over the streets. And he felt that because it was quite a grand looking, almost like it looked a little bit like it wouldn't have been out of place in Washington. He was very much thinking about the view of the aftermath of his attack and what that would look like to the press.
The face of America on its knees.
Yes, yeah.
It's weird the thing about the building as well. It was also like kind of touted in far right like things long before the attack about that being a building that there's some reason kind of gravitated towards wanting to attack as well. So it's like, but as you said, yeah, obviously the aftermath it surely does leave a stain on the history and sticks in the memory for sure.
And he wanted to, as we said, create symbolic images, much like that of Waco and Ruby Ridge. He also believed that its adjacent large open parking lots, which were across the street, might absorb and dissipate some of the force to protect the occupants of nearby non-federal buildings. So he's saying that in his plans, he didn't want any kind of collateral damage, which he absolutely would later cause. In addition, Timothy believed that the open space around the building would provide better photo opportunities for propaganda and also potentially inspire potential copycats.
Meow.
Meow. Over the next 7 months, Timothy and Terry Nichols stockpile a huge amount of bomb-making materials. They store it on the Nichols farm as well as several rented storage spaces, including rented sheds and outhouses. The pair eventually stockpiled almost 5,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer, nitromethane, and a diesel fuel mixture, much of which was purchased under the guise of using it to fertilize their farm. And also, obviously, they were going around the country with these traveling gun shows, and he was going to different hobby and craft stores and picking up small amounts just to top that out. There's this whole story that McVeigh would go to numerous places and get refused these products without having a good enough story to warrant buying such a high volume of it. And apparently this just strikes me as quite funny looking at how he is in his nature. He apparently dressed up one day in full biker gear, like full leather gear, like little bandana around the neck type of thing. And he tried to convince a fuel salesman that he needed nitromethane to fuel a number of motorcycles, that he was a motorcycle racer. And at the time, not a lot of motorcycles were fueled by nitromethane. It was only the real high sort of MotoGP stuff. And they looked at him and sort of interrogated him further. Who do you race for? What do you do this? And he couldn't answer any of their questions. So he just sort of walked away, kicking the dust, holding his helmet. Just, I'll try again tomorrow. But yeah, the group will refuse sales multiple times and had to travel all over the country to eventually obtain, enough materials and also completely avoid suspicion or detection. They also broke into a quarry in Marion, Kansas, where they stole numerous blasting caps and a large amount of dynamite. They then prepared the bombs and tested their prototypes in the desert to avoid any detection.
April 8th, 1995. Timothy is caught on surveillance footage attending a strip club called Lady Godiva's in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He attends the club with 2 friends, Andreas Strasmere and Michael Brashear. It is speculated that this is somewhat of a last hurrah or final goodbye for Timothy as his friends pay for a dance for him. It is alleged that he told one of the dancers at the club, "I'm going to be famous. On April 19th, you'll remember me for the rest of my life." Should it be the rest of your life?
Should be, yeah. Maybe he had some drinks.
Maybe. But yeah, that's quite an eerie thought. April 17th to April 18th, 1995. Timothy and Terry Nichols took the bomb supplies from the storage unit in Harrington, Kansas, and loaded them into a large and now infamous Ryder rental truck. The truck had been rented by Timothy using the fake name Robert Kling. The pair then drove to Geary Lake State Park, where they secured 13 barrels inside the truck by nailing boards to the floor. Using plastic buckets and a bathroom scale, they mixed the chemicals together. Each barrel weighed around 500 pounds once filled. Timothy then added more explosives near the driver's side in case the primary fuses failed, and set up a dial fuse ignition system as a precaution. It is believed the pair also test drove the van to the bomb target site with weighted loads multiple times. All in all, preparation to this point took 9 months. Timothy drilled holes in the truck's cab and body, running green cannon fuses through them into the cab, where they connected to non-electric blasting caps. The fuses were designed to ignite around 350 pounds of high-grade explosives, including Tovex Blastrite gel, which would then detonate the remaining barrels containing ammonium nitrate, nitromethane and diesel fuel. Timothy also intentionally left behind any materials and tools in the truck to be destroyed in the blast, so that no evidence could be left behind. Once the bomb was ready, Terry Nichols returned to Harrington, and Timothy took the truck to Junction City. The total cost to build the bomb was around $5,000, which is roughly $12,000 in 2024 money. It is alleged that Nichols then tells Timothy, or perhaps had told him the month prior, that he wants no part in the actual delivery and placement of the truck bomb. I mean, 8 months into the plan, and he's like, by the way, I'm not doing it.
Apparently, they had quite a heated back and forth because Nichols is a bit older than Timothy, and also was a former senior or superior officer in the army. So they had a bit of a heated back and forth. But I think basically it all became very real at this point, and he was like, "Actually, I don't think I can go through this."
The pair then go their separate ways, with Timothy driving the now loaded truck and parking it up at the rest stop in Ponca City, Oklahoma, allegedly spending the night sleeping in it.
The only source I could find online states that he went to check into this motel that he had been staying in, but then had second thoughts of leaving the truck unattended. So he slept in the cab of the truck whilst those explosives and dynamite were all in the back. Yeah. And I just think, how much are you trusting your own work there to be able to sleep?
Yeah, I guess, even if you stayed in the motel next to it, though, you still, if it goes,
true.
But you'd pick the bed, wouldn't you?
You would, yeah.
April 19th, 1995. Approximately 7 a.m. Timothy wakes up on the 2-year anniversary of the end of the Waco siege and begins driving the truck towards Oklahoma City. He carries with him an envelope filled with pages from the Turner Diaries. He also carried an envelope full of revolutionary materials that included a bumper sticker that he'd likely made himself, with the slogan, "When the government fears the people, there is liberty. When the people fear the government, there is tyranny." Underneath, Timothy had written, "Maybe now there will be liberty." He decides to wear a t-shirt featuring a drawing of Abraham Lincoln and the words, "Sic semper tyrannis," which means, "Thus always to tyrants," famously shouted by John Wilkes Booth prior to assassinating Lincoln, and which was also apparently shouted by Brutus when he killed Julius Caesar.
Sic semper tyrannis!
We did a little bit on the wife of Brutus, Dan, didn't we, in our iceberg recently? Apparently.
How did he die then?
The
There were so
wife
many, I forget.
Was the apparently swallowed smoking hot coals.
Oh, that was awful.
Yeah.
Why'd she do that?
Brutus died and she was devastated by his death, so she allegedly ate hot coals, but apparently modern historians believe that actually she was in a room with coals smoking, and it was carbon monoxide. Is carbon monoxide, is that the one?
Likely, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Brutus.
At around 8:50 a.m, Timothy enters Oklahoma City. 10 minutes later, at around 9 a.m, as he drives the rented Ryder truck up Northwest 5th Street, he calmly lights 2 of the bomb fuses, one on a 5-minute timer and one shortly afterwards on a 2-minute timer. Trusting his handiwork profusely, he is then partially observed by surveillance parking the truck up at a drop-off point directly in front of the Murrah Federal Building, locks it and walks quickly toward a nearby YMCA. As he is headed to his getaway vehicle, he dropped the keys to the truck a few blocks away. "9:02 a.m. Chaos, black smoke, glass shards, debris and screams fill the streets of Oklahoma as suddenly a large 4,800-pound truck bomb exploded directly outside of the front of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. A third of the building is immediately destroyed in the blast, and part of it is violently ripped from its foundation. Thousands of workers were going about their typical day in the surrounding streets, with an estimated 646 people present inside the Murrah building at the time of the blast. As well as this, dozens of children had been dropped off for daycare by their parents. The blast killed 168 people, though a contested element of the case is that, due to a rescue worker being struck and killed by a piece of falling debris whilst they were trying to save others, there may have been an indirect additional death, totaling 169 victims. This tragically included 19 children, most of whom were attending daycare. The bombing injured almost 700 additional people, many of whom had severe burns, abrasions or broken bones. The victims ranged in age from as young as just 3 months old to 73 years old, and also included 3 pregnant women. Some were killed immediately in the blast, others were burnt to death. but many were crushed to death or died by asphyxia in the debris as a result of the collapsing building, rather than the bomb itself. Others later died as a result of their wounds. There are some incredibly powerful and also graphic photos of firefighters trying to rescue toddlers from that morning.
Mr. Jim Hargrove, a survivor who worked in the Murrah Building and was able to escape the debris via tying curtains together with his colleagues and using it as a rope to scale the exposed floors, recalled the following.
I was in the building when it happened. The whole thing just fell on my head. There was an office to the right of me and an office to the left of me. After the explosion, there was just nothing there. It was bare. I could see my car out in the parking lot on fire. It shook the hell out the whole place. I've never seen anything like it in my life. It felt like somebody slammed me in the back of the head with a bat. We pushed debris to the side to be able to get out. My office was chest deep in debris.
So yeah, I mean, the scenes here are unimaginable, and I hate to say it, but it's kind of exactly as McVeigh wanted it, in terms of the streets are full of debris. There's a big, thick black smoke emanating from the building. But I don't think he maybe expected it to go the way it did, in that the actual collapse of the building caused more deaths than the bomb itself. Ultimately, the bomb caused all of it. But it's, very striking images. There's chaos in the streets. It is very reminiscent of what we saw in the 9/11 case. But just absolute terror. And he claims he did not know there was a daycare facility by the building. It's horrific, some of these photos of the firefighters trying to rescue babies from this chaos.
Yeah, there was an officer I saw on a documentary where he basically recognised it being his nephew, I believe, as one of the kids, and he's realised that was the last time I'd see him, and he asked the police officer if he would be able to, or his sergeant, if he would be able to kiss them goodbye. And then, quite coldly, the officer said, "This is a crime scene. You can't touch the evidence." Which is like, have some compassion, man. Jesus Christ. Of the 169 victims, 108 worked for the federal government. 8 of the victims were federal law enforcement agents. Among them, 4 were from the US Secret Service, 2 from the US Customs Service, 1 from the US Drug Enforcement Administration, and 1 from the US Department of Housing and Urban Development. Additionally, 6 victims were US military personnel, 2 from the US Army, 2 from the US Air Force, and 2 from the US Marine Corps. The bodies of the victims were identified at a temporary morgue established at the scene. A team of 24 personnel used various methods, including full-body x-rays, dental examinations, fingerprinting, blood tests, and DNA testing to identify the victims. I don't think I've ever heard of all of that happening, at the scene.
One part that was just absolutely staggering to me, and I'm sure it happens in a lot of cases where there are, explosions or bombings, is the identification of limbs. And being able to pair those up with other remnants of people is it was particularly challenging in this instance, which is
I mean, I've never heard that phrase, which remnants of people, which obviously is completely spot on, but that is very the explosion, which had the force of approximately 2 tons of TNT, caused approximately $652 million worth of damage. And it was so powerful that it created a 2.4 metre deep crater next to the building and could be heard over 55 miles away. The blast caused extensive damage, destroying or damaging 324 buildings within a 4-block radius and shattering glass in 258 nearby structures. Broken glass alone accounted for 5% of the fatalities and 69% of the injuries outside the Murrah Federal Building. The explosion also destroyed or burned 86 cars in the area. The devastation left several hundred people homeless and forced the closure of numerous offices in downtown Oklahoma City. Within minutes, more than 1,800 calls were made to 911 following the explosion. Ruth Schwab, a survivor who also worked in the Murrah Building, recalled the following.
I flipped on my computer to warm it up, and that's when I heard this horrific noise. Your brain works in funny ways, and I thought my computer blew up. Then I started to feel like I was falling. It reminded me of a sci-fi movie, where they have the black hole and the people are falling down and down and down, and you wonder if you're ever going to hit the ground. I guess when I hit the bottom of the black hole when I was actually passed out, I could smell smoke and I could hear terrible sounds. Sounds of a building collapsing, like you hear on TV or in the movies. It's real. You hear popping and everything, and I was hearing groans and soft cries which haunted me. I couldn't even admit I heard them for a while, because I felt like I should have done something, and I couldn't.
Shortly after the bombing, emergency services tended to the scene and authorities began investigating the explosion. The FBI was called in to lead the investigation, assisted by local law enforcement and the ATF. Investigators quickly identified the truck bomb as containing a large amount of ammonium nitrate. They initially had 3 key theories: international terrorists, drug cartels looking for revenge on the DEA, or perhaps the least expected, anti-government radicals attempting to start a rebellion against the federal government. Surveillance footage from nearby buildings and witness accounts led to the identification of a lone white male suspect who was seen near the scene just moments before the blast, lending to the chances that it was the latter of the 3 theories suggested.
Approximately 10:35 a.m., Timothy McVeigh was arrested at a traffic stop an hour or 64 miles away in Perry, Oklahoma. This chance encounter happened just 90 minutes after the explosion had occurred. He had initially only been pulled over by law enforcement for driving his yellow 1977 Mercury Marquis without a license plate. However, upon further questioning and Timothy providing answers that generally didn't line up, his car was searched and revealed to contain suspicious materials, including a weapon and a business card from a Wisconsin military surplus store which had the words TNT at $5 a stick, need more, scribbled on the back of it. This officer, there's interviews with him that pulled him over and arrested him, said that he had no idea the man that he just stopped was the Oklahoma City bomber. He had like a large trench coat, sort of waterproof jacket on, and could see that there was a weapon holstered there, and eventually ended up having to hold his gun to the back of Timothy's head and saying, "This is loaded." They had a back and forth where Timothy just let you know my weapon's loaded, and he held the gun to the back of Timothy's head and went, "Mine's loaded too." So I did a bit with him. He was subsequently arrested on charges of carrying a concealed weapon, and upon further questioning, Timothy became a suspect in the Oklahoma City bombing investigation. Timothy's association with the bombing was initially suspected due to his anti-government views and his prior involvement in extremist groups. At the exact same time, a 4-block evacuation is called back in Oklahoma at the Murrah Building, as rescuers believed that they had discovered a second bomb. However, this would later turn out to be a false alarm. So whilst rescue efforts are going on back at the scene of the bombing and people are being tended to, obviously the FBI are investigating the situation, and there are reports of a van's axle or debris of a van's axle having been sent 200 yards away from the building during the explosion, and they were then able to link this axle to being the truck that caused the explosion. As well as this, they were able to find the remnants of its license plate and trace the vehicle back to a specific rider rental agency located in Junction City, Kansas. With the help of an individual named Eldon Elliott, the agency owner of the truck rental shop, they were then able to link Timothy McVeigh directly to renting that truck out. They also then used Eldon's description of Timothy and the man who had rented this truck out to draw up a composite sketch. And yeah, there are a lot of photos of this during any documentary or research you do about this case. The composite is very, very good. As well as this, Timothy was identified by Leah McGowan of the Dreamland Motel, who remembered him parking a large yellow Ryder truck in the lot in the days leading up to the bombing. It turns out Timothy had even signed into the motel using his real name, and an address that was found on one of his forged driving license actually matched the home of Terry Nichols. Although Timothy had used many different false names for previous transactions, Leah McGowan recalled that when Timothy went to sign into the motel, it was observed that he hesitated for a second and looked up briefly as if he was trying to remember which false name to use. She recalled the following.
That's what Timothy did. And when he looked up, I started talking to him, and it threw him.
Do you rate the composite?
The haircut's off, but
Little
other
button
than that-
nose and the chin.
It's very good, yeah. The haircut is bang off, but everything else is bob on.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, Dan. Very well said.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Better than the Cubs.
Thank you. April 21st, 1995. Whilst Timothy was being held on charges relating to carrying a concealed weapon, a local tip-off revealed that the FBI had a suspect that was being interviewed in connection with the Oklahoma City bombing and was being held in Perry Courthouse without bail. A large and extremely angry crowd began to gather outside the courthouse. Timothy immediately requested both the provision of a lawyer, the provision of a bulletproof vest, and to be transported safely via police helicopter. Whoa. Though he was not granted a bulletproof vest, he was later transported by helicopter. Wow, he got that wish? Brilliant.
I think they had to. at this point when
safety.
I think they had to, but kind of a stroke of luck in a way, because he was about to be released on bail for the driving without a license and carrying a concealed weapon, and then they were quickly like, the FBI were quickly like, no, hold him for longer. This is our guy. So it was a very, very lucky that they got that information. So, well, great work as well, but I'm thankful that it happened so quickly. That's what I was trying to say.
There is some very infamous footage and photos of Timothy standing in the shaded garage of Perry Courthouse, staring out at the angry crowd and journalists that had gathered. Investigators also identified Timothy's accomplices, Terry and James Nichols, of whom Terry was later implicated in the plot. They did this by obtaining a search warrant for Timothy's father's house and subsequently tapping his phone, whilst also searching numerous fake addresses that had been found in Timothy's possession. After learning that the police were closing in on him, Terry Nichols handed himself later in that day.
So on that, when they asked Timothy's dad, he immediately said the names, like, it didn't even like at all wince. It was just straight away said, if these people are involved, if Timmy's involved, these two will be involved in it as well. So it just kind of goes to show what kind of opinion he had of these people as well.
Yeah, that's the thing. He very much, like, none of his family shared Timothy's beliefs or feelings or sentiment about the government, did they? That his sisters were eventually provided information against him. It was all very the black sheep of the family.
When searching Terry's home, police found a large amount of highly incriminating evidence, including a hand-drawn map of Oklahoma City with the Murrah Building circled and a mark for where Timothy's getaway vehicle was parked.
That's fairly incriminating.
Mm.
Yeah, little skull and crossbones and big fire.
They also found...
Big fire.
Big fire.
They also found several blast caps and a large amount of ammonium nitrate, as well as several books on bomb making. Nichols was charged with conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction and first-degree murder in connection with the deaths of the federal employees.
April 23rd, 1995. During the evening, after having spoken privately with survivors and the families of those who were killed in the bombing, then American President Bill Clinton addressed the nation as follows. Dan, do you want to do an accent with it?
I did not sleep with...
Oh.
I did not have sexual
Monica
relations.
Lewinsky.
Oh, you're both pretty good.
Sexual relations, yeah.
I did not have sexual relations.
I did not fuck her in the...
Oh.
Was it? Just in the air.
The bombing in Oklahoma City was an attack on innocent children and defenseless citizens. It was an act of cowardice and it was evil. The United States will not tolerate it, and I will not allow the people of this country to be intimidated by evil cowards. Zing.
It's that kind of language, though, like, that you think, which I don't know if he's trying to rile up
Timothy.
But, you know, that sector or that minority of, what's the word I'm looking for? The right wing. I guess essentially calling them evil cowards, that's the exact kind of language I think would rile up people within that sector, which is like, so it's a bit interesting choice of words, I would have thought.
Wasn't he, what, he's targeting at Matey Boy though, right?
I'm not saying he's wrong for calling them an evil coward. I'm just saying that it's quite a...
Potentially...
Inciting. Yeah. But he's a president, he can do what he wants, apparently, so...
That's true.
With whomever he wants. All over the blouse. April 25th, 1995. James Nichols, Terry's brother, was also arrested in Kansas, but he was released after 32 days due to an apparent lack of evidence.
Yeah, this is the guy I mentioned at the start of the episode that is on Bowling for Columbine documentary, and he just, if you haven't seen it, very much worth a watch. He claims to have known everything about what they were doing, but never actively got involved. But then in the documentary, this is made, years after the fact. He kind of was like, he was showing off bits of the farm and bits of the house, and it was kind of like a wink and a nod to the camera that I wasn't involved, they never got me, but maybe I was. But just instantly uncomfortable when I see that footage of him on that show.
Keep saying it as if you've got a little thing happening between you two. Keep bringing it up.
We've never met. I don't know if he's even still alive.
I haven't seen you both in the same place.
But we can't disprove that. He died 8 years ago, nearly.
Because the pen is mightier than the sword. But you always must keep a sword handy for when the pen fails. I sleep with a .44 Magnum under my pillow.
Come on. That's what everyone says. Is that true?
It's true.
If we were to go and
The whole world knows that.
If we were to go and look under your pillow right now, would we see a 44 Magnum?
Yeah.
Honestly? Would you take us and show us right now?
He took me into his bedroom, but told the cameraman to stay out. Sure enough, there was a 44 Magnum under his pillow.
Late April 1995, Timothy McVeigh reportedly told investigators with a lawyer present that he had carried out the bombing as a form of revenge for the federal government's actions at the 1993 Waco siege and the 1992 Ruby Ridge standoff. Timothy's motive for the bombing was to retaliate against the government, which he believed had become corrupt and oppressive. It is also revealed that Timothy, alongside 2 other unnamed masked accomplices, broke into the home of Arkansas gun dealer Roger Moore back in November of 1994, where they stole dozens of firearms, thousands of rounds of ammunition and other valuables. A value of approximately $60,000 worth of guns, gold, silver and jewels, before also transporting the stolen goods in Roger's own van. Gold, silver and jewels.
Yeah, maybe it was that Roger Moore.
Maybe. Sounds like a bit like a pirate.
Yes.
Quite the bounty. May 1995, as investigations continued, authorities uncovered evidence that Timothy and Terry Nichols had been planning the bombing for months. They had purchased large quantities of bomb-making materials. The FBI discovered that Timothy and Terry Nichols had also attended dozens of gun shows and frequented anti-government groups, helping to explain their radicalization leading up to the bombing.
April 24th, 1997. Timothy McVeigh's trial begins in Denver just over 2 years after the bombing. The prosecution argued that Timothy was the mastermind behind the event and that he had orchestrated the attack to retaliate against the government for events like Waco and Ruby Ridge, as well as increased gun control and rising taxes. The prosecution presented a total of 137 witnesses. Amongst them were Michael Fortier and his spouse Laurie, as well as McVeigh's sister Jennifer. Each of these individuals provided testimony that basically corroborated McVeigh's animosity towards the government and his intention to engage in militant actions against it. The 6-person defense, meanwhile, claimed that Timothy had been influenced by extreme right-wing views, but that he did not personally intend to kill so many people, which I think is bollocks. Nor was he aware of the presence of children, which again I think is bollocks. They also tried to use the necessity defense, which I hadn't heard about this before, claiming that Timothy had been forced to act in order to prevent any future Wacos or Ruby Ridges occurring. So
which I think
is bollocks. Follow the ball. Oh,
could be new merch.
Could be.
Ben's bollocks.
Well, the fact he had a 6-person defense as well. Who is paying for that? Because I don't think, I mean, last we heard, he was $30,000 in debt.
So yeah, formation-wise, we were 6 in defence.
It's very
leave you much on top.
Significant point of dispute in the trial revolved around a left leg that was found unaccounted for following the bombing. Initially, the leg was thought to belong to a male, however, subsequent investigations revealed that it was actually the left leg of Lakeisha Levy, a female Air Force member who sadly perished in the bombing. As a result, Levy's coffin was reopened to allow for the replacement of an earlier unmatched leg that had been interred with her remains. The leg in question had been embalmed, which hindered authorities from obtaining any DNA evidence to identify its original owner. So there was basically just arguments over a potential second bomber that was known as John Doe No. 2, who they this whole time believed was a second perpetrator alongside Timothy McVeigh. However, the prosecution countered this assertion, arguing that the leg could have belonged to any of the 8 victims who had been buried without a left leg. June of 1996, after a lengthy trial, Timothy McVeigh was found guilty on just 11 counts of murder, as well as conspiracy and use of a weapon of mass destruction. Although his defense team pleaded for a reduced sentence of life, he was sentenced to death. April 1997. The following year, Terry Nichols was tried separately for his role in the bombing. He was found guilty of conspiring to build a weapon of mass destruction and of 8 counts of involuntary manslaughter of federal officers. He was also found guilty in a second trial of 161 counts of first-degree murder, one for each of the victims who died during the bombing. The following year, he was sentenced to 161 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole after a federal judge ruled that he would not receive the death penalty, and this was down to his cooperation in providing evidence during the trial against Timothy McVeigh. Michael Fortier, who had some involvement, but definitely not to the extent of the Nichols brothers, or certainly not to the extent of Timothy McVeigh. But obviously, he had knowledge of the event prior to it happening. He received a sentence of 12 years in prison in exchange for immunity for his wife, Laurie.
2000 to 2001, Timothy McVeigh's defense team filed numerous appeals challenging his conviction and death sentence. However, the US Supreme Court rejected these appeals. Timothy briefly shared a cell block with Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, which would be an interesting conversation.
It's again that interview I watched with McVeigh. Towards the end of his life, he talked about them being near each other and that they spoke quite a lot. And while they didn't politically agree with very much, they agreed with a lot about life. They agreed that people should be able to live freely, but obviously, Kaczynski much more to the left, McVeigh much more to the right.
And then here I am stuck in the middle with bloody Ben Carter.
Brilliant. There you go.
Lovely. I'd like to watch him play a game of chess. I think Ted would shit all over him, but
agreed.
Fair enough. June 10th, 2001, on the eve of his execution, Timothy expressed in a letter to the Buffalo News,
I regret that these individuals had to lose their lives, but that is the inherent reality of the situation. It is understood from the outset what the human cost will be.
He further remarked that if an afterlife exists, he would improvise, adapt, and overcome.
Very Dwight Schrute there. Very.
Yeah, there's a bit of Dwight about him. He also stated,
If there is a hell, I will find myself in good company, with many fighter pilots who also had to target innocents to achieve victory in war. I was aware of my desires prior to this moment. I recognised that my goal was state-assisted suicide, and when it occurs, it is unmistakable. You have engaged in an act that you are asserting should be prohibited for medical professionals.
He, again, to go back to this last interview with him, he tried to convince the journalist that, look, I went to Iraq and I killed all these people and I was praised for it and I received medals for it. But I've come back here and done it here and I'm being punished for it. And he tried to argue on a moral standpoint. He still held his convictions towards the end, but I think he was just very warped, in a very warped sense of the world.
not quite exactly a comparative to that, but Hero of War by Rise Against. Very interesting lyrics and very kind of talking about morality of war and how in one country you're considered a hero, in another country you're the villain. Worth a listen if you haven't heard it. But yeah, not quite exactly the sentiment of this, but it's still interesting. June 11th, 2001 at 7:14 a.m, 33-year-old Timothy McVeigh was executed by lethal injection at the US Penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana. His execution marked the first federal execution in 38 years. Timothy's final statement was a brief one. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. And his last meal was 2 pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Never been one for mint chocolate.
I love it.
But, yeah,
I love it too.
You guys do have
best.
weird similarities to McVeigh.
I was going to say to each other.
I hope that's been conveyed in this episode. A brother of one of the victims who was present at the execution stated, he just had a totally expressionless blank stare. He had a look of defiance and that if he could, he'd do it all over again. President Bill Clinton signed a special legislation that barred Timothy McVeigh from being buried in a military cemetery. Yeah, which I think is obviously definitely right. In 2002 to 2005, following the bombing, the Oklahoma City National Memorial was established in honor of the victims. The memorial includes the reflecting pool, the survivor tree, and chairs symbolizing the lives lost. Victims and families impacted by the bombing were awarded restitution through the Victims' Compensation Fund, which provided financial support for those affected by the attack. A lengthy series of legal proceedings and investigations continued in the aftermath, including the examination of the role of extremist groups and the potential influence of other individuals in the bombing plot. On the memorial, the Eastern Gate bears the number 901, representing the last moments of peace before the bombing. The Western Gate shows 903, symbolising the first moments of recovery after the attack.
Well, there you have it. That was the case of the Oklahoma City bombing, the life and crimes of Timothy McVeigh. Yeah, very heavy first episode back, but one that is, a very interesting and obviously highly tragic case indeed.
Yeah, it was a big case to start with. Obviously, like we always say, it's always important to kind of go through this and remember what happened. As I said, the sad state is a lot of his beliefs are still being echoed now by a lot of people, and a lot of hatred and a lot of right-wing groups are growing. So yeah, sadly, this wasn't like the final act which changed society. It's still echoing now.
Yeah, 100%. And like we've said a few times throughout this episode, we will eventually cover the case of Ruby Ridge, because that too is a fascinating one and a very preventable and tragic one indeed. Yeah, we're back. We're back in the series flow now. Episode 2 coming next week. And with that, guys, you never guess who's been renewed.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
we haven't talked about this.
Yeah, we didn't. We had a meeting about the series, excited about it, saying we're going to freshen things up. Maybe we'll lose certain things. Maybe some bits didn't work, or some bits are a bit shit. But what is it? Is it something exciting and good that we all like?
Throw me in, Bonds.
Benjamin Carter's cryptic clues. Everyone gather round for some clues that can be quite cryptic, but he's going to give them to you anyway. Hope you can figure them out.
They're shitty, then they don't work. No, fair enough. Go on.
So, welcome back to the series. The cryptic clue for the second episode of Series 11 is: no, go left, Stephen. We're in Scranton. No, go left, Stephen. We're in Scranton. So there you have it.
Yeah.
Should be a lot of people getting it, shouldn't there?
Yeah, you've done one thing which I
told me not to.
Probably, yeah, use a word. She's not supposed to give the whole word.
Oh, don't tell them that.
Dan, anything to end it on, like on a higher note than that?
No, glad to be back. Glad to see you boys again. Again, thanks for all the love with everything. Our community is just growing and growing at an exponential rate. And don't forget, if you are a Spotify user, you can gain access to all our shitloads of minisodes within the app. So you don't have to fuck around with the website anymore. Stop swearing, Dan.
And I feel like after the Ben's clue, I feel like I have to try and lift the mood a bit more than that as well. So I'm going to do ICMOP back for 10% off at the store, just for the first week that we're back. And we hope that because of that, you'll accept our apology about that clue.
Right.
But we are back.
My bad then, I guess.
ICMOP back.
Cost us.
I have cost the team there, which I don't feel right about, actually.
ICMOP back for 10% off at the store. Use that in the code. It'll only be 7 days from now.
Damn. I've hurt my boys. Absolutely unintentionally as well.
Fuck!
Damn.
Anyway, it's good to be back, and we'll be back again next week with a brand new case. And until then, like we always say...
We say this all the time.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Well, unless, just writing odd phrases in your end of yearbook, California girls and Lamborghinis and
that's fine. I think.
Just out of character. That was the first suspicion.
Maybe eat mint choc chip if you're Tom.
Yeah, try it. Oh, it's lovely.
No.
You get the sweet of the chocolate and then the crisp of the mint. Don't you, Dan? See you later.
See you later.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Take care.